The values of the terms. For this part of the presentation, I'm going to go directly and explain all of this part in the SQL database. So before I mentioned that whenever we create a new class of process, we're going to have a new table created here that's going to be called DBO panel, and then it's going to have an ID. And this ID is going to be the ID of the class of process. And we also mentioned if there's other levels or other IDs, it's going to be indicating that inside of this class of process, we're also using a group of fields or a multiple selection field, or maybe a multiple selection field inside of a group of fields of this class of process. So since here I found an ID that has several sub-IDs, we're going to focus on this one. And the first thing I want to show you is how we can enter the platform. I'm going to go to reports. And here we can see I've got a class of process. The reference is 29.1. If I enter, we can see here we've launched 3 different processes. Okay, here we have the first one, the second one, and the third one. All of them belong to this class of process in its version 1. If I open one of these, we can actually see in the form, we've got a lot of data. There's data that's inside of a group of fields. There's prefixes, suffixes, there's symbol selection fields, date fields, and so on. So we're going to see what values or how much data can we find in the panel ID table that we have in the database. So the first thing I'm going to do is open this table, or I could actually go to search first for the table. This one here called Procesos Clases. Here I could always find the process with the ID 29. I can actually find it over here. So here it is, 29. So here we can see all the main information of this class of process, including its reference. As we can see, it doesn't have a key in front like these other ones. Okay, so here we have the number 29, and I'm going to now search for panel ID 29. So I'm going to click here. I'm going to go filter. And here we go. We have panel ID 29. And I'm going to open the first 1000 rows. As we can see, we only have 3 because we've only launched this class of process 3 times. Besides, I can see that some of these fields are empty. That's why it's giving me a null value. And some of them have data. For example, here I can see there's a field. It's called chronometer. It's got a value. Here we've got one of the instances, the number 1. It's got a value in this suffix that's called city. It's also got a value here in this suffix called address. But there's certain fields where I don't really have a value. What I have is an ID. For example, here I can see the field location. This is a simple selection field. It's just showing me an ID. Later on, we're going to learn how to figure out these values. But anyways, here we can see we can find most of the general terms and their values. And in some cases, we can't really see their values. For example, in a simple selection, we'll be able to see an ID. And the same thing would happen with the prefix. For example, here I cannot find the prefix. I can only find general terms, suffixes, but I don't really find the prefix here. Later on, we're going to see how to find that information. By the way, here we can also find system fields. For example, the creation date, who was the modification date, and values like the ID of the person who modified or created this process. So we can find some information here, but to find the rest of the information, I'm going to have to go to other tables.